In this video, I'm looking at making a protractor, and the protractor is going to be based on the technical drawing that I can see on the screen here. So we're looking at a circle which is going to have a diameter of 120 millimeters or a radius of 60 millimeters. The center of that circle is this cross. There's going to be a scale here from 0 to 180 degrees. That's going to go clockwise from 0 here on the left to 180 on the right, and 90 degrees being this vertical point here. We've got here major indicators every 10 degrees, then smaller indicators every 5 degrees, and individual small little indicators for every single degree. I'm going to extend the protractor down by 5 millimeters here, so that the 0 center point and 180 degrees are clearly visible on the set square. So, and there's space here in the middle for graphics and text to be added. So with all that in mind, let's come to Techsoft Design and see how we're going to do this in terms of a CAD file before sending it to the laser cutter. As usual, I'm going to right click on grid lock. I'm going to set the grid here to be 5 millimeters. I'm going to work with lines in that top pale blue color. And let's have a see. I'm wanting to have here a circle which is going to have a diameter of 120. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm not going to actually create that circle. I'm going to come to the line tool and I'm going to do a small cross. Let's look in the middle of the page here. I can move things later. A small cross, which is going to be the center of that particular protractor. Now let's just zoom in on this for a second and think a little bit more about this. That's going to end up being quite a big cross, I feel. The cross that I see here is much smaller. It seems to be 5 millimeters across. Whoops. So let's have a see. I'm going to come to a circle tool here, and I could just draw a circle on here and do a circle like that. But again, that's a bit on the big side. I could come to step lock here, and I could determine how big I want that circle to be. I'm actually going to go back to the circle tool here, go to a circle with a given center and radius, and I'm going to have here a radius of 2.5 millimeters, which is going to have um, a diameter of 5. Let's go back to grid lock. So it's going to snap onto that center point there, and that's making a nice little kind of target point for the center of my circle. While I'm at this, let's just look at a few more tools. I'm going to go to the delete part tool by holding my mouse button down on the delete any tool, moving across there and releasing. And I'm just going to trim that back a little bit. I'm liking the look of that as a little center point for my protractor. Now I've put the center point first because then when I come back to the circle tool with a given center and radius, I can now enter in what I want the radius to be for the actual protractor itself. It has a diameter of 120, so therefore the radius is going to be half that. That's going to be 60. And now I can just click on that center point I've already identified, and there's the profile of my protractor. Now, of course, I want to have it so that it is going to be a semicircle, but I don't want to cut it through the center of the circle. What I'm wanting to do here is just have it slightly below that center point. So I'm going to draw a horizontal line here on the grid, 5 millimeters below. Again, all this being done with grid lock to make my life simple. I'm now going to come back to the delete part tool and trim back those excess lines. And that is the basic profile of my protractor. Okay, let's just confirm a few things here. Let's go to the diameter tool here, and let's just identify there that is 120 millimeters in diameter. Let's now start to put on the degree markings. So at this point, I'm going to go to step lock. And what I'm actually going to do, I think, at this point is, yes, I'm going to try something different out here. Rather than working with a step lock setting or step spacing of 1 millimeter, I'm going to go 2.5 millimeter, which is useful in my mind because it's half of 5. So now, as I move things around, I've got the midpoint, I've got the squares themselves, the edges, and the midpoint of the squares on the grid. I'm going to start here at, okay, let's go here from the 0 point. So I'm going to click, and you'll notice now that I've got 2.5, 5, and 7.5. So I've got my small degree indicators, my 5-degree indicators, and my 10-degree indicators. That's why I changed the step lock settings here to 2.5. Now I want that to be not only the 0 degrees, but the 10, the 20, the 30 in a clockwise direction. I'm just going to zoom in, scroll up a little bit there to help. Okay, let's select that line, and now I'm going to go to the transformation tool on the left-hand side here. This is tool A7. I'm going to hold the mouse button down and come to the rotate the selected objects tool. Now I want to have this rotated through 10 degrees, so it's going to go 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, and I don't want to replace the existing point. I want to repeat this point every 10 degrees. It's going to go up to 180 degrees, and my thinking here is that it's every 10 degrees, so 180 divided by 10 is 18. So if I put in here 18, let's see what happens. I'm going to click on OK, and I'm going to click on the center point of the protractor and see what happens. It's going to rotate this anti-clockwise by 10 degrees 18 times. So this is because we're working with bearings in maths, and bearings go anti-clockwise, not clockwise. And if I just count this through, I did it 18 repeats. Well, of course, this is 0. So actually this is 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, and then all the way to 180 on my 18th point. So actually repeating it 18 times was the right thing to do, but rotating it through 10 degrees was wrong. So let's just undo that with the undo button down the right-hand side. With the line still selected, let's right-click on the transformation tool. And now I want to rotate it instead through a negative 10 degrees, and again 18 repeats. Click now on the center point of rotation, and those are my 10-degree markings in place. Okay, so I'm now going to do the 5-degree markings, and I think in order to make this a little easier to see, what I'm going to do is select those existing 10-degree markings, come to line color, and I'm going to make those faint. In fact, I'm going to make, yes, faint like that I think is going to be enough. They're like construction lines now. Let's come now back to my line tool. It's black still. Let's zoom in a little bit onto the side here. And now I'm going to do a line which is going to be 5 millimeters in length. So there, hopefully you can see that the gray line extends out, 7.5 millimeters, and the black line extends out 5. This is again working with my step lock, which has got a 2.5 millimeter step spacing. I'm going to select that 5-degree marking, excuse me, right click again on the transformation tool. And I want to rotate this now through 5 degrees. I don't want to go negative. I'm going to go 5 degrees because now I'm going anti-clockwise, and this is now following mathematical bearings. And in this particular case, I want to replace it. I want to move this 5-degree marking to this new location. So it's not 0. It's not 180. It's going to be at 175. So let's go rotation angle 5, replace, and I'm going to click on the center of the square there. Now it's interesting how my cursor disappears when I move it into the center there. I'm not liking that very much, but I know that's the center, and that has just moved that now 5 degrees up from the edge. Let's just prove that's the case. If I come to my dimension line tool, I can now come to the angular dimension tool. I can click on my horizontal line, my 5-degree line, and let's just see what the angle is there. That is 5 degrees. Perfect. Okay, now I want to have that every 10 degrees now. I want it to be 5, 15, or should I say 175, 165, 155, etc. Remember, you can always work around this way if you want to instead, but you'll have to put a negative number into the transformation tool when you rotate it. So I'm going to now right click on the transformation tool. I've got this 5-degree mark selected. I'm going to now rotate it not through 5 but through 10 degrees, because I wanted to go from effectively, if it was over here, 5 to 15 to 25, or 175 to 165 to 155. And how many times do I want to repeat this? Well, I think I want to repeat this 17 times. Now, if I'm not too sure about this, I could always have left it as 18, and if it makes too many, I can just delete the excess points. But I'm fairly confident here this is going to be 17 repeats. Let's find out. Now I click on the center point. Again, my cursor is disappearing when it's on the center point there, but anyway, there it is, and that worked out beautifully. So I've got my every 10 degrees as a major marking, every 5 degrees as a smaller marking, and then I'm now going to do the 1 degree. Now, at this particular point, I'm actually feeling that these lines are probably a little bit too big. And at the start of this video, I talked about using a 2.5 millimeter grid setting. And I'm thinking now, actually, this, as a result, my 7.5 line and my 5 millimeter long lines are too long. And I wish, if I was doing this now, I would want to get rid of these lines. I'd want to make them smaller, perhaps 6, 4, and then 2 millimeters for these single degree points. But that's for you to decide. But that's my feeling. I'm just finding these lines, these indicator lines, a little bit on the big side. I'm going to select all those lines as well. I'm going to change the color there also to the gray so you can see more clearly what's going on around them. Let's now do these single degree markings. So this is now going to be with step lock turned on again. I'm going to stick with my plan here. I'm going 2.5 for this. So again, no, let's work it from this angle here. Let's go from the left side this time. You don't have to, you can go from either side. I'm just exploring different approaches. There's my black line. Hopefully you can see there that this is the longer 7.5 millimeter line, and here's my small 2.5 millimeter line in black. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to rotate it again. Now, thinking about this doesn't want to be 0, this wants to be 1 degree. So let's go for a 1 degree angle of rotation there. In fact, I'm going clockwise, so it's a negative bearing, and I want to replace the existing location of this marker. I want to move it to the 1 degree point. Click on OK. Again, click here on the center point of the protractor, and it just moves there 1 degree. Now I want this to be 1, 2, 3, 4 degrees. I want to leave the 0 as this big line, the 5 as this medium length line, and I want the short line to be 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've got to now use the transformation tool to duplicate this another 3 times. Let's do that now. The line is selected. I'm going to right click on the rotation tool. I want to rotate it again 1 degree, but I want to repeat this so it becomes 2, 3, 4. That's 3 repeats. Okay, I click on the center point again, and now over here I've got the original one I just had, 2, 3, 4. That was 3 repeats, each one being a degree apart. Let's come to the angular dimensioning tool here and double check that that is 4 degrees. Yes, it is. Okay, fantastic. Let's now keep going. I'm going to take those lines, and at this point, I'm actually going to group them together. Okay, so edit and group, or of course, Control and G on the keyboard. I've just pressed them there, grouping complete. So I think that's going to be easier for me to now manage this little selection of degree markings. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4. The 0 is already highlighted. The 5 is already highlighted. I want to highlight now 6, 7, 8, 9. So that means the 1 is going to become 6, the 2, 7, the 3, 8, and the 4, 9. Well, in order to go from 1 to 6, I need to add 5. In order to go from 4 to 9, I need to add 5. So I'm going to take those degree markings, right-clicking on the transformation tool, and I'm going to rotate this through 5 degrees. Again, this is going to be negative because I'm going clockwise, which is a negative bearing angular value. And here now repeats. If I think about this, let's have a see. This I do want to repeat this. If I repeat it once, it's going to move to here. In fact, let's do that right now. I'll repeat it once. I'm going to again click on the center of the protractor. It's still bothering me here that I can't see my cursor when I put it there. That's really strange. And you can see it's moved that now to the 6, 7, 8, 9 position. I'm actually going to undo that because I want to do it all the way around the whole protractor. So let's have those degree markings highlighted. Let's right click again on the rotation tool here, and I'm going to keep the angle of rotation the same. So 1 becomes 6, 3 becomes 8. I'm going to repeat this, but I want to think how many times to repeat it here. Now, if you're not sure, you can try different values out, and if you add too many, then that's not a problem. You can delete them afterwards. But I'm going to try and get this correct. Now, I know that before I was looking at every 10 degrees, and that was 18. And then I was doing every 5 degrees, but it was 5, 15, 25, 35. So actually that was every 10 degrees rotated, and that was 17. Now here I'm looking at every 5 degrees. I think that if I add 18 and 17 to get together, I will get the correct number of repeats, which, if I'm not mistaken, comes to 35 repeats. So I'm going to see if this works. Perfect. And there are all my single degree markings. Now, I mentioned earlier how I feel as if the lines are a bit on the long side. Yeah, I still think they are so-so. Anyway, that's your aesthetic decision, and also, user experience decision to make. Don't forget, of course, that all of these lines want to now be changed to red, because that is going to be the color for engraving. And of course, we also need to make sure that the center point there is also in red too. Okay, so we're nearly there, folks. We're now going to add in the numbers, and I'm going to get my text tool here. Let's come to the step lock tool. I'm going to click here, and I'm actually going to put in here 000. That's because I'm going to have numbers going all the way up to 180 degrees, and that is a 3-digit number. I'm going to specify the height of these numbers to be 5 degrees. I can change the other details here if I want to, but I'm not. I'm also going to go for center, but I tend to find this alignment tool never works, but we'll see what happens. Okay, let's get the numbers there. Now, those numbers for me are far too big. I put it at 5 degrees because I can see here that center line there, with my step lock, I'm 2.5 millimeters down, and 2.5 with 5 millimeter high lettering. It means that that center line passes right through the numbers. I hope that description makes sense, but I'm not happy with that. So let me see what I'm going to do with this. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change the size of that lettering. I'm going to make it 3. No, I'm going to make it 4. How does that look? Okay, still a bit on the big side. Okay, I didn't really want to do 3. It's going to make things complicated, but I do think it's a nice size. I'm now going to go to step lock, and because that's 3, I'm going to put my X and Y step spacing to 0.5, and you'll see why in a second. If I zoom in on this, that now means that I can make it so that this text is on the line, because 3 millimeters is going to be 1.5 millimeters below and 1.5 millimeters above, and that's why I've set it to that value. Let's also bring it in a little bit here as well. Okay, so that looks nice to me. Good. I'm now going to take the text, I'm going to come back to the transformation tool, and I'm going to rotate that through -10, because again, I'm going clockwise, which is a negative bearing. And I know that I want to go all the way to 180. And I remember that when I did the 10-degree indicators, I had to do 18 repeats, because this is 0, and then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, all the way to 18. 18 repeats, click on OK. Make sure I've got grid lock back on again here, so I'm going to really snap onto the center point. And now that it's red, I can see the center point is there, and those are all my numbers. Now, the last thing for me to do now is for me to take each of these numbers and basically reformat it to be the value that I want. Now, if you remember here that I went for a center text option here, it doesn't actually center it, keeping that within the shape of that text box, which I do find very frustrating, but there you go. Let's just see how this looks as I continue to go. Oh, 10, yep. Let's keep going here. So I'm clicking on the text. I'm going to properties in the bottom right corner. That's going to be 20, and so on and so forth. I'm going to pause the video, finish this off, and then we'll come back when everything is finished. Okay, so there's my protractor finished, and looking at it now, the way that the numbers rotate round and are upside down on this far right doesn't really look that user friendly. So I'm actually going to have another go at doing these numbers. I'm going to select the whole protractor here. Let's just copy that. Gridlock is turned on. Let's paste it. And let's move now this to the right. So let's have a see what I can do now instead in terms of these numbers. Now I need to select the numbers, and to do that I'm going to choose a different selection tool. It says select objects by lasso. So if I come back to step lock now, and then what I'm going to do is basically just put a lasso shape around all those numbers, avoid the midpoint, double click to finish, fully enclosed, and then delete. Okay, fantastic. So let's see how this might be designed to be more user-friendly. Now, looking at the protractor here that we've got on the title screen of our design folder, I can see the numbers are actually located so that the 90 is horizontally positioned and for ease of viewing, and then the other numbers kind of rotate around as they follow the protractor. So bearing that in mind, let's just reevaluate how this might look. I'm now going to go back to my text tool. um, I'm going to click here. I've got the step lock on, which if you remember had a step spacing of 0.5 millimeters. Here I'm going to put, let me see, yeah, I'm going to put, let's just go with 90. Let's just see how that works out. And I'm going to put in a height here of 3 millimeters. Am I happy with the size of the numbers there? Yes, I think I am. There it is. Fantastic. Okay, so let's now think about aligning this perfectly. This is going to get a wee bit complicated now, I think. I've still got step lock on here. No, I'm going to go to gridlock. I'm going to draw a line right, I'm going to put it here, right here. I'm going to select that line. I'm going to right click on my transformation tool here. Every 10 degrees, 18 times, I'm going to duplicate that. So I've got these black lines. Now remember, with our laser cutter settings, black lines are ignored. What I can now do with this 90 is I can turn off gridlock, turn on the attach tool, and now you'll notice as I move things around, there's a square, a small square in the middle of that rectangle, which just surrounds the four-way arrowhead. And if I click with that square encompassing an endpoint, it snaps onto that endpoint. Now I want to snap it onto this endpoint here. And so I'm using these black lines as a locator to get these numbers absolutely perfectly aligned. So that's where I want this number to be. Now, with this number, can I go back to the transformation tool? I'm going to repeat that 9 times to the right, so a negative angle there. Let's now turn off attach tool, turn on gridlock. And now with it, I'm also, this is still selected. I'm going to right click again on the transformation tool. This is now going to be positive to 10-degree rotation, or a bearing that's going to go to the left, and 9 repeats. And that is looking very smart. Now all I need to do is, let's have a see, edit these numbers. Now let's just quickly try and do this now. I'll do a few and then I'll pause it and finish off. Yeah, and I'm thinking here, are these numbers going to stay on the aligned to these construction lines that I created? Now it seems as if as long as the numbers stay 2-digit, we're perfectly safe there. But let's now have a look at this 90. If I make that 90 100, what is going to happen? Yeah, and look, it misaligns. And the same is going to happen here for the 110 degrees. It suddenly misaligns. So what I'm going to have to do here is turn off the gridlock, turn on the attach tool again, and realign these to the construction line that I'm using to align them to to the correct positioning for each 10 degrees. I'm also thinking here as well that perhaps 3 millimeters for the text is a bit on the big side because it's almost like these numbers are kind of running into each other. Maybe I should make these numbers only 2.5 millimeters in height. Anyway, I'm going to pause the video here and I'm going to finish this off and we'll see how it looks. Okay, so I've redone the numbers here on this right protractor, and I've made it now so that the numbers are all more clearly readable if I'm looking at the protractor in this orientation. I don't have the numbers flipping upside down. It looks like the 0 there is not aligned to the 0 marker, but when I zoom in there, I can see it actually is, and if I select it, I can see that the center point of that 0 is on this black construction line. And I've done that for all the numbers here, apart from one number, which I've left just to show something that I've been finding. And it's the 40 over here. Now, if I just select the 40 degrees, it looks accurate enough. But if I pixel peep on this and zoom right in, you can see it's off the line. I've got my attach tool turned on here with grid lock, step lock turned off. And if I click on that and then just try and click on the end point there, you see it didn't snap on there. If I try and do that again, if I click on there and try and make sure I'm snapping on the end point there, it's not going on. And so you've got to be a little bit careful here. What I find the solution is if I click on this, I just click anywhere else on the drawing area and then bring it back in again and click with the end line there within the square, suddenly it will then snap on. So just clicking off away and then bringing it back in again generally solves that problem. Okay, so otherwise that is all done. The only last thing I need to do here is come to my contour tool. I'm going to do a 0 millimeter graphical contour spacing in blue. And the last thing here is I'm going to add in that cutout for my protractor. And so as with the ruler and the set square, I believe that's the approach I always use when I'm doing final cutouts for shapes. You could, of course, just select the outside profile of the protractor. It is actually, of course, in two separate parts here. I've got this semicircle as a separate part to the baseline there, but I personally like to just bring in here use the contour tool and just bring in that contour. When you do that contour, just be careful. If I just bring that to the side again, just be careful when you're contouring that you do click on the external edge of the shape, because if I click on the internal edge, then it is actually going to contour all of the lines on the inside. Let's see if I can do this without it crashing. It can sometimes crash when you do that, and you can see it took quite a long time there. So if I grab this here, bring it to the side here, you can now see how it's contoured all those internal details. And obviously I don't want that, so click on the outside of the line you're trying to contour in this case. Good, fantastic. I think we are there. Okay, so good luck with the creation of your protractor.